Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, it's the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com. And I'm here with a successful client. Her name is Anne, and she's agreed to share this time with you so you can benefit from her experience and strength and hope and wisdom, as well as her trials and tribulations and stumbles and falls. Right, Anne?
That's right, Dr. Glenn.
So I'm in a mood today. So, Anne, tell me just a little bit about your story before you came to us. What were the maybe three major things that turned it around for you, and where are you now?
I spent my entire life restricting and binging and purging and punishing myself for eating too much, spent a lot of days fasting. So I was never really overweight, except maybe 10, 15 pounds at my worst times. But I just spent so much time worrying about food. Looking back, it's just, I feel sad about how much time I wasted.
I definitely resonate with the wasted time. And what I remind myself when my pig wants me to start obsessing about that and feeling really bad is that if it weren't for having gone through what I went through, I wouldn't have been forced to learn these tools. And these tools give me a level of presence and productivity that turns me into 2 or 3 Glens. Because I'm not sitting digesting and bloated and sweated on the couch the way that I and the vast majority of America used to do. And so, in the years that I have left, and I like to think I've got 30 or so active years left, I plan to accomplish what a normal man would do in 60 years. That's what I tell myself when that happens.
Right.
So go ahead. I interrupted you. I just saw an opportunity to correct a squeal.
Well, that's interesting what you say about packing more time in, because part of my whole identity plan, after working through the program and coming up with my I statement, and my whole identity plan is to be radiant every single day and to embrace every single day and get as much out of it as I can. I've made strides professionally. I've made strides with my athletic prowess just from being in the program. And first of all, being more confident about the pig is not me. The pig is just this voice. And 2, following through with things, like you say in the program, the more you do it, the stronger you get. That is my ultimate goal. It's just to enjoy every single day and maximize the rest of my life.
Beautiful. Did you make some progress on your own in overcoming these patterns?
Before the program?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Good Lord. Well, for me, progress in the past was like not eating for days and days and just being as thin as I could. And to me, that was like a good day. If I could get on the scale and it was down a couple pounds, or if someone said, are you okay? You look pretty emaciated, To me, that was like, wow, I'm a great person, And I tied that to my self-worth. If you want to talk about progress in a kind of a twisted way, that was my progress. Now I don't even think about food. I was telling Yvonne, my coach, the other day, something happened. I can't even remember what it was. And in the past, I would have been like binging on chips and then purging and finding stuff to eat. Even though it was a challenging day, I didn't even think about food once. It just wasn't on my radar anymore.
What do you attribute that change to? What insights, what exercises, what routines? What do you attribute that change to?
Well, on the most basic level, I think for me, having the food rules in place, like these are not negotiable. No, we don't eat between meals. We don't eat junk food. We don't eat more than 1 serving. We don't eat after 8 o'clock. So once that decision is made, that takes away a lot of room for negotiation, where in the past, the pig would have been like, we're having a bad day, let's do this. I think just having that fundamental. These are the set of rules. Okay, now you're going to have to figure out something else because that's not on the table anymore.
Beautiful. And was it smooth sailing once you figured that out?
Yeah, yeah. The pig will once in a while be like, oh, come on. It's like talking to a toddler, like, just pretend we argued for 5 hours. The answer is still no. So you might as well save your breath.
It sounds like you made kind of a miraculous jump in mindset from you got to be thin to win, restrict as much as you can, maybe over exercise. It sounds like you're not doing that anymore, or you feel differently. It's kind of a miraculous jump in such a short time.
Well, it's more for me about being as healthy as I can. So maybe my legs don't look like Michael Jackson at his worst point. Like I remember walking by storefronts and my legs I look like a praying mantis at different times of my life. And that to me was progress. But now I am so proud of being so strong. I'm physically fit. I've always been an athletic, but now I'm like winning age group categories in races. And I told my coach that was part of my I statement too. I am an age group winning athlete. So I don't want to harm myself by wasting it on bad food or binging or, like you said before, lying around on the couch in a heap.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. It's not clear to me how that attitude came about, though. Like, was it just one day you realized thin is not necessarily healthy? Did somebody say something? Was there a refutation that you did? It sounds like you were as almost anorexic as anybody could be. How did you go from there to having a kind of healthier mindset about focusing on health as opposed to thinness and having these rules and that's what you eat and your pig said otherwise, but no thank you? How did you do that?
I think there's a lot to thinking more clearly when you are nourished. And you talk a lot about that in the program. You have to get your basic needs met to be able to function. So I think by having consistent, high quality nutrition, I started to think more clearly about, okay, this is realism. I mean, there were points in my life I was like, I'll drink 1 cup of milk a day and run 10 miles every day, and that's how I'll stay thin. So if I was starving myself like that, I was kind of not quite with it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yvonne convinced you to nourish yourself more regularly so you could think more clearly. Did I convince you to do that? Do you remember anything that
Yeah,
I
I,
mean?
I remember one of the earliest sessions with you, we went through these are basic needs that need to be met. Here's what you need to do as a foundation, like rest. And, you have to be able to sleep. You have to be able to have beauty in your life. You have to be able to have good nutrition. You're not going to be able to function on a higher level if you don't have your basic physiology met.
I see. Okay, so it was the lecture or maybe something that I said in a group with regards to the idea that the reptilian brain, when it senses too much organismic distress, when it feels like the basic survival needs are not met, that it preempts rational thinking. It pushes the rational brain out of the way. And it sounds like that got through to you.
Exactly. That's an accurate statement. Yep.
I really try. Okay. I'm just playing devil's advocate and trying to totally understand. It's unusual for someone who's caught up with the high of starving themselves or compensatory exercise. It's unusual for someone to let go of that because usually there's a sense of superiority that goes along with it. And like it's the one thing people can control in their life. And so I find that many people, if not most people who went down the road that you went down, it's not as simple as an educational fix. Like it sounds like the education did it for you when you really understood that that's how the brain works. You said, oh, well, I better eat nutritious. Did you experience any fear of letting go of that ardent pursuit of thinness?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't sit around and think, oh, I wish I, like watching the Olympics, for example, the last 2 weeks, watching the women runners. I'm like, dang it, I wish I could look like that. If I could starve myself down, I could run a lot faster. I know that that's not going to happen, even though sometimes I think, gosh, I wish I could do that.
I think you're saying that the fantasy's still there underneath. It's just that
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. Who's that girl that used to lie around on a sofa and like take up no space, Kate Moss or something? And I'm like, boy, that would be cool to be that thin because, like you said, our culture venerates that in a lot of cases. Like you said, a feeling of superiority. For example, if I were going home or something and I was going to run into like a high school boyfriend, would I like to look like Twiggy? Sure. But it's not something, let's just say this, I'm not willing to spend that time pursuing that because now my life is richer in a lot other ways.
That makes sense. So it sounds like what you've discovered is a physiological fact. If you allow your body to get too deregulated, that it becomes difficult to think straight. And then that fantasy of superiority and the ultimate thinness that kind of lives underneath there, that it starts to come out again. And you're aware that it's there. But you're also aware that you as a human being are intellectually superior to that set of thoughts. And you can follow some rules and nutrify yourself and keep that fairly dangerous set of thoughts locked up in a cage, right?
That's correct.
By the way, for legal reasons, and I just have to tell the audience that anorexia is a very dangerous disease, and I can't promise, nor can anybody at my company offer to diagnose, treat, cure any disease, disorder, or condition. So you do need to have a licensed physician and licensed counselor working with you to overcome that. Nevertheless, this is what we see, with the 2,000 people we've worked with, the people that have gone down this road. When they have gotten better, it's really an intellectual decision. It's not that they feel radically emotionally transformed or that they had some really deep insight about their childhood or something like that. It's usually that they recognize that physiologically they're capable of overruling this thing and that they can keep it at bay by taking care of themselves. And that's essentially what Anne is saying, right?
Yep.
Were there any rough spots along the road?
Oh, yeah. The pig always had an argument for why we should have some sugar. I did have some days where I would go off my food plan. I never went off my food plan like eating after 8 o'clock or eating doubles, more than one meal. But I did indulge in chocolate like a couple times, just like there was some desserts around. My husband was having a dessert. But I found that the less I ate sugar, the worse reaction I had to it. I don't know if it was hypoglycemia or something, but I would feel awful, like a truck hit me. So that was a good lesson learned. Just don't even go down that road. Stay away from it. So that's a good refutation for the pig. Yeah, I know you think you want it, but it's going to make us feel terrible.
Very good. Did you have any trouble connecting with your coach? Did you feel like she understood you? What was that like?
Oh, I had the best coach. I had Yvonne, and I loved being paired with someone like the same age range as me because you just have a different kind of, I think hormonally you're in a different place. So that was really great. And she would say, okay, this was like how it was for her, and maybe get some ideas from that. So that was really great.
Beautiful. And I guess you watched the videos. Did you do the exercises?
I did every exercise. I loved them. I think that was just so much fun to do the exercises. And also, it helped me learn about myself a lot. And my favorite bonus video was how to overcome nighttime eating. So many tips, practical tips. And like you said, not this like emotional driven, I'm bad or whatever. It was like, hey, these are practical things you need to do during the day to take care of yourself. I would say to everybody, if you don't do anything else, watch that one. Oh, and can I say one more thing about the price?
Sure.
Okay. You pay a certain amount or whatever. And I told Yvonne this and I laughed because one of the things in the advertising is you'll save all this money on food, and I'm like, whatever. I'm not going to save any money on food. I have saved so much money on food. When I go to the grocery store now, I'm like, are you sure it's this little amount? I don't buy junk food anymore. And we only have one serving. So we eat up all our leftovers. And that's another thing I would say. If you're skeptical about this program, you're going to save a ton of money in food.
What happens is people don't believe they're going to stop binging.
Right.
And they also have never really taken the time to calculate how much money they are spending on binging. And that was very interesting. You're eating your leftovers because you're not really eating as many so you can save enough for another meal. We found the average person taking our program saved approximately, well, at the rate of $4,000 a year. We don't have data from them a year later, but they saved at the rate of about, I think it was $4,200 a year. You kind of think about how often you binge and what you spend on an actual binge, and you sit down and write it all down, and then you multiply that out. It's pretty frightening.
Yeah.
Most people, if they put that money in the bank instead, they could easily buy a nice car. Most people don't believe that it's going to happen for them.
And not just the binging necessarily, but for me, food was so important. Like it was all I centered around was like I'd have to make this big fancy meal for every meal. So we had something special, quote unquote. And now I'm to the point where like, oh, let's just eat this leftover. We're not spending money on like big fancy things like we were before because of me thinking it had to take on more significance than it was. So both of those things.
Lovely. And is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, I don't think so. I'm just so happy. It was a fantastic experience, and I appreciate you very much.
We appreciate you also. Is there any way that I can help you?
No, just keep on doing what you're doing. And if you ever get over to this part of the country, come and give a talk to some of my women's groups.
Where are you exactly?
I am on the Mississippi River in Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. Okay. I used to own an advertising agency in Milwaukee.
Really? Oh.
I did. Back in the day, like 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah.
Very cool.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.